Okay, this is a quick demo of some of the newer stuff I have in my extensions. I tend to use a bunch of my own and a couple others. I don't really pay attention to where I put new codings, as I don't like to create new extensions. I just add them into existing relevant areas where I've already coded something similar. So I'm going to show off a couple of the things I've got just recently. The first is an option that I found usually by short, keyed it in, and it's combat groups. And this is show short effect or token summary, and it's client independent option. So if I go ahead and drag this down, I usually put it in the tooltip, and then I try and edit it, which is usually a royal pain to get the editing to work. I've never really figured out except to keep trying until it does work. I don't really know the secret, but as you can see, it comes off the end. Long summary. So that's the default. And then when I turn it on, okay, that'll be the short summary. And again, still having trouble getting it to pick up. No idea what the pattern is. I just keep trying until it works. Short summary. Typical FGU mysteries. So this is the new one I wanted to talk about first. Essentially, I'll pull in one of my standard test guys, Evil Test Mods. He's got a bunch of effects on him already. This is the default long that you would normally see when it's turned off. You can see he's got a whole bunch of stuff in there. And if you look into his map, and I'm going to go ahead and bring the map back up, you can see he's got a whole bunch of crap in the map here too, right? So what you do is you go ahead and set that option to on, and it will limit it to just a count of what's active, what's inactive, and a one-word summary of anything that's not any of my new specialized effects that have a plus or a minus in front of them. So it's like an abbreviation. And if you ever want to get to the full effects, you can just click the effect button. You know, you're back. You can see everything. And to get the map to refresh, you basically just have to close and reopen it. And as you can see, it's also got a summary. I usually play with this like this because I tend to have a lot of effects, but that's just so you know, long, short in this instance. And of course, over here on the host, I had already set it to short, but you know, it's independent. But I'm going to leave it short because I like that. If I want to show you effects, I'll just go in and show you. But that's the first option I want to show you. The next option I want to show you is a new equipped effects option. Now, this is basically going to allow it to do update matching of spell or power with components, which is basically a plus sign in front of the effect, and also verifying that it's actually got components to display. So when you added into the CT previously, spells would never really match custom effects because you would get into conflicts with Gal and some other named spells. But now I supply this option so that when I drop something into it, PC or NPC, it'll basically populate those where it wouldn't before. In this case, it looked up a spell and grabbed a custom effect off there and threw it in there. This is just expanding some of the capabilities so that I could handle some of the things I wanted to do with my new component inventory action feature. But essentially it's generic, just like the other one. The long, short summary, generic stuff to turn it on and off. Equipped effects has expanded a little bit on what it can match for spells and powers in terms of custom effects, which are very limited to only things that have components because of conflicting name matching with Gal and some other things, which is why it never did it in the first place. But that shows you that. two generic changes that have been added in. So let's see what else I want to do here. We'll go ahead and drop him in just so I have something to play with. Basically, the new options for inventory actions, okay, is this one, and it's in generic actions. I now support effects for INVACT, which is in inventory actions, INVLR, which is inventory long rest, and INVSR, which is inventory short rest. And these are managing inventory counts, which I'll go over here. Right now, I've turned them on. They'll be defaulted off. And essentially what that does is it allows me to define things in the effects to force when you do an action, and I'll show that in a second. When you do an action, it will actually make it so that it keeps track of the count or whether it's required in the inventory or not. It'll actually match it in. And the whole idea behind all this, like most of my extensions, is so that once the data's set up, my players or I never have to pay attention to it again. It's just there, it just works. There's nothing to track, nothing to pay attention to. It just does its thing. But I'm going to show you how to set it up too. So the syntax of what I've got here is usually an effect starting with a plus. Then it's followed by the attack, heal, or save action name of what you're trying to do, or power name. And then it's a semicolon after that. And then the keyword. In this case, it's INVACT. And if you stop right there, then everything else to the right of it that it would normally be defined will be defaulted. But first I'm going to just cover all the things as if you did define them all. So the next would be a colon, and then if you optionally had a tilde or not, followed by the inventory name or named coin, like in Star Wars 5e, I'd have credits, and I'd say credits, bracket 30 would mean it required 30 credits to be consumed or present depending on this tilde. And basically, this will keep track of the number that it assumes the count is with in braces here. And I'll cover this. This isn't going to make much sense as I go through the raw syntax, but it will when I actually show you examples. So the next thing is basically after that, it's going to have a brace of a number or default to 1 if it's not there. And just like this name, if the inventory item name is not there, it'll default to the actual attack, heal, save name. But that'll be the count of how much will be subtracted out of the inventory when this action is done, or it will fail to do the action. Unless this is a tilde, in which case then it will be ensuring that there's that many in your inventory, even though it won't consume it. The next optional argument is a comma followed by a specific ammo argument, which basically will be a number to how many ammos one of these consumption things that you just defined will take to be consumed. In other words, if I define something in the ammo count, it'll set the ammo to that for max ammo. And if there's something in the inventory currently for that, it'll also not fill in that ammo immediately so that you're out of ammo. And that's 0 if it's not defaulted. And if there's any ORs present after this, then it behaves like an OR function between different INVACT definitions. So that was all confusing. You're like, what the hell is he talking about? Well, here's some examples from SW5E and 5E. So for my assault cannon, that's an actual weapon, and the inventory action is the keyword, as you can see. And it's followed by power cell, which is an inventory item name. And it says one of these will be consumed for every 4 ammo shots. So when it sees this in your definition and you kick off the action for assault cannon, like attack, it will basically first determine that the ammo is 4. And if it isn't, it will set the max ammo to 4. It'll determine that there is a power cell out here. And if there is, it will proceed as normal for firing something until you use up the 4 ammo, at which case, when you're out of ammo, it'll say the normal GA out of ammo message. And when you actually do the, what's it called, the second time you try and execute out of ammo, because the reason I do that is because I want my players to lose an action if they try and fire something out of ammo. That's just how we play, even now without this interface. But the second time they run it, you basically, it will clear the ammo and consume the power cell, one of them, or whatever number that says. Like for blaster's pistol, it takes 16 ammo rounds to consume 1 power cell. For grenade, it's just going to consume an inventory item named grenade, plasma every time this is executed or fail to execute. Medpack is going to consume 2 herbs and a serum, 1 serum, and 30 credits in order for that action to proceed, and it's going to consume them out of the inventory. Darkness, that's a bad example. That's not even the darkness definition, but I'm not sure why I have that in there. I shouldn't have that in there. That's probably a mistake. Let's go ahead and get rid of that right now. Darkness has its own components and isn't like, a grenade or a potion where you're just consuming 1 based on the name. Like if you have a longbow, right? And this means you'd also have to have longbow +1 or whatever the exact syntax is of the longbow, although it can be lowercase or uppercase. INVACT, it's going to say, now the reason that you see 3 arrows here is because of the way FGU did their inventory items. I have older campaigns where there's an arrows 20, and the arrows 20 is actually going to have 1 item for every 20 arrows. And as you can see here, it says this will consume 1 for every 20 ammo count. But nowadays, when you drag the arrows 20 into your inventory, it'll throw out 20 arrows, which is different technically. And so what this is doing is it's saying, look, I'm going to look for arrows first. And because it has nothing defined, those are going to default to, it's going to consume 1 and the ammo count's 0, which it will set to that if it finds arrows. And if it doesn't find them, it'll go to arrow, which is another type of definition just to confuse things. And if it doesn't find any of those, it'll go to arrows 20. And if it doesn't find any of those, then because this was the last one, you'll have a max ammo count of 20, and it'll be fully populated with 20 used ammo until you get one of these things defined. Otherwise, longbow won't be able to fire. Shape change, it's just saying you require a jade circlet inside your inventory. That's what the tilde means. It says don't consume it, just make sure it's there. And as far as the inventory item names for long rest, short rest, it's basically you're just giving it an inventory item name and then telling it whether it's going to be consumed on a long rest or short rest and by how much. For example, field rations, 1 days. Notice I have to give the full text of the inventory item. It's basically going to consume 2 during a long rest and 1 during a short rest. Now, I wouldn't normally do that in my game. It would just be INVLR:1. But this is an example. So I'm saying, yeah, for short rest, you're going to eat 1 field ration, and for a long rest, you're going to eat 2, just as an example. And that's the syntax of the new stuff that I supply. Now, that sounds all confusing, and oh my God, what's he doing? What I have done is I've made myself a module for my players, and anything that my players currently have in my live campaigns, I've populated in those modules. So if I look at the new components that I'm going to require them to use for spells and things like that, I basically have a component thing here, and you can see here where my new module 5e components, I just defined a bunch of these things, right? Very minimally, picked a cost, and I used something I looked up online for a page of components for 5e. You can do whatever you want, or you can use my 5e components thing here out of Dropbox, just with the awareness that I haven't defined everything, just what my players currently use. And I'll populate it as time goes by. But I don't have to do anything because I've already defined all the components that these guys use for all of these spells that they use. Let me do a search that limits it here for custom effects. So as you can see here, these also are all in my 5e components. I've only got two things, items and these things. So if you use EE, right, equipped effects, it will automatically match these names and populate them into your thing when you drop them in the CT, which is the only way I play. So, but if you don't, you'd have to literally edit into your CT these syntax for whatever you wanted to have limitations based on the inventory with. So for animate dead, I looked it up on this big chart I had off from an online source, and said, okay, well, it requires a drop of blood, a piece of flesh, and a pinch of bone, and it's going to consume them. It was actually optional whether it consumed or not, but I'm choosing for my players that'll consume it. The arcane eye is basically just going to require a bit of bat fur, 1, and as long as that's in the inventory, the spell will work. Otherwise, it won't. So it gives meaning to foraging and being in town and actually buying stuff you need. This awaken actually requires an agate of 1,000 value. Well, I have an agate of 10 gold piece value because that was one of the other components for something else. So this one takes 100 and it consumes it in order to do one awaken spell. Otherwise, it'll fail. And so on and so on. There's blowgun needles here. That's for an actual weapon. And it's the same deal with arrows, right? The way they've done it now, you end up getting 3 types of things. One ancient that you won't get anymore, but I do because I have older campaigns with it in it. And you just define what ammo is allowed and the sequence you want it to search in for. And because you don't see I don't know if you've noticed, but INVACT is stupid. It doesn't know what you're talking about. This is just the fact it's a spell component or like a hand grenade or whatever. It doesn't care. It's just got these rules of saying, look, I'm looking for INVACT. I'm going to determine if it's required or consumed. And I'm going to see how many I require or consume. And then if it's got a comma, then it is specific to weapon ammo. And it's going to deal with the max ammo and the current ammo count to keep it up to date so that when you actually do the second out of ammo, it'll consume them all and eat whatever you told it to eat. In this case, at blowguns, it would have been 50 needles or, 1 needle every shot. I don't know that I have to go through all these. They're pretty much the same. There may be one where I have ors and a semicolon somewhere in here, I seem to remember, which would be the worst case scenario to show you. It was something or something and something, but it's just left to right. It's not intelligent ors. It's just going left to right. When I see the INVACT, what separates it from the next one? That's going to be either the semicolon for an and or for an or. And if there's another one after that and it says semicolon, then it's only the things to the left and then it immediately goes to the right. I'll let you figure that out. But that's it. I just looked up these things online, defined them all in here, defined all the components my guys would need. And then, of course, when I drop them into the CT, they populate with whatever they need. In this case, he's a test guy, so I've got all sorts of stuff. There's darkness, which requires a bit of bat fur or a drop of pinch of pitch or a piece of coal. Any one of those 3 in his inventory will allow the spell to proceed, and it won't consume it because they're all saying it's just required, not consumed. Same for flaming spear. So you can just add these in or remove them on the fly in your actual CT entry. You don't have to play the game like I'm doing, where I have a whole component mod that has everything in their spell list defined. You can just say, I happen to want to only do weapons. And you just define weapons for yourself in the CT here. Or you may just say, I'm not doing any of this stuff, but every once in a while I'm going to have something that I want When that action happens, I want something in the inventory required to be there or consumed. Well, this tool can do it, and it is a tool. If you can't use your imagination to figure out how to use it, that's on you. You can just do what I do and be stuck with my limited logic or imagination. But it's really just a way to inventory action. Do you consume or require something? That's all it is. And the long rest, short rest things, like right here, I actually don't see anything in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, go into my inventory. Some of these things will only populate when you in equipped effects, when you equip them. You can see these are 0. I've used up all the crossbow bolts, and I'll give you an example of that actually running this stuff. And use potion of healing. I'm going to use that, so I'm going to define that. I don't see any for 1 day of rations. Now you see, if I populate that, okay, now I have 1 day of rations. And if I do a long rest, it's going to consume 1 day of rations, right? If I come in here and I say, okay, everybody, we're doing a rest, anybody who has that requirement there, and in my case, all my guys do, right? And so when it does a long rest, you can see in the comments here, long rest consumed 1 of inventory rations 1 day, leaving 0 left. And, we had 1 there, and now we've got 0. Now, my players, right, they didn't know anything about this. They didn't do anything about this. All they did, wrong guy, sorry. All they did was had stuff in their inventory and tried to do an action at the time. And if they're curious about what they need in the inventory, right, and they play with a short too, they can just open it up here, look up the spell they're trying to do and say, damn it, I needed a rotten egg or a skunk cabbage leaf in my inventory. When they were in town, they had better have gotten that, or they better have salvaged it someplace. But if it's all there, who cares? It works the way FG does all the time. It just runs along. And this long rest is a consumption one, right? I didn't have the tilde, so it's not saying it requires something. It's saying I'm going to actually consume something in the inventory. And of course, now if I do a long rest and there's no longer any food there, all it's going to do is tell me long rest did not have enough rations in inventory. Required 1 to gain full rest, but only had 0. That's all it's doing. It's just telling you. And if you're an evil DM like me, you can say, oh, I'm going to penalize you somehow. That's up to you. And you may not even do it once. It may take 3 of these to do it, but it's just something for extra fun. Again, you don't have to do anything. All you're doing is hitting long rest. All this data has already been defined by you during your session prep. And it's either there or it's not. And it's either going to take effect here or not. And it'll tell them, if they're missing something, what it is and what they're missing. As far as weapons, it's a little different. Let's see what I got here. I have a whole bunch of arrows, so I'm assuming I have a longbow. And I do. And I intentionally filled it up just for the demo's sake. So if I go ahead and hit it, it says, cannot attack when out of ammo. Now that's in my normal games, that's how it goes. And I say, you lost your action, you forgot to fill your ammo, you just fired while it was empty. And they would normally have to go into their inventory, chop off 1, and clear all these. Well, now all they have to do is next time they attack, they just attack again. And because there is 1 there, right, and it says did not have enough crossbow bolts or bolts, blah, 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 action failed, okay, that's basically there's nothing there. And if I look in there, sure enough, there's nothing here. I swear every time I do one of these videos, I run across a bug. Anyway, bug fixed, and back to where we were going. So if I have no crossbow bolts of the 20 variety, the old school definition, which you will never see anymore. It'll always be crossbow bolts when you drop it in. But as I have old campaigns, I'm giving you this demo. So I go back in. He's out of bullets. I run. And basically he says, we just consumed him, fired 1 off. And now, of course, if I fire a whole bunch, and And now I'm going to be out of ammo. There it is. Cannot attack when out of ammo. And the action failed. And it's going to fail every time now because I have no ammo. But let's say I go back in and instead of the 20 bolts, I put in 20 crossbow bolts, which is what it'll actually do if I drag one of these crossbow bolts 20 out of the inventory. So then I'd go ahead and fire after I load it up. It clears it, and we start firing. But at this point, it's set the max ammo to 0 because we're firing one thing at a time. If you looked at the definition for the arrows, plural, for the longbow, right? There's no number of consumed, there's no ammo number. So it defaults to 1 consumed and 0 on the ammo count. And so what happens when it starts to use those, we will actually see it decrement as it's showing here in the chat, down to 18 left for each one we fire. And it won't actually show you anything because these are no longer being consumed in packs of 20. So you wouldn't have 20 ammo shots there, you'd just have 1. And it's taking care of that on itself. And eventually, right, you run out of, probably should have made it less than 20. You run out of it, and what are we at now? 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so now we're out of ammo, and I won't have anything else. And it's just going to tell me I'm out of ammo. And the action failed. And it'll fail forevermore until we put some ammo in there. That's how ammo works. It looks weird, but it works really well for my games and how we do things. Obviously, you could do it for daggers and things like that, spears, but I don't because they're going to be picked up so often that I don't really see a point in subtracting the inventory of them just because they threw it away. I can handle those manually. I don't want to sit there and repopulate them every time they pick them up. I'd rather just do that the normal ammo way. And you can use these, mix and match. You can use some and not use others. Right now I'm going to be using them all for my players in their next campaign. And they're currently using them in their current campaign, but since I populated all their components in their inventory and set up everything already for them, it's just going to work like it normally does. There's not going to be any issue. It'll be when they start the new campaign and forget to buy something that there'll be an issue. They're out in the field and, oh, it's not working. I don't have that. Good. Is that everything? Well, I mean, if I do a potion, right, you can see the potions are in here. Potion of cold resistance. Again, equip effects throws it up here. So, but if I try and do a potion of cold resistance, I have how many of them? I have 1. So when I actually execute the potion of cold resistance, it does it. And it says, whatever it does for its normal thing. Oh, it didn't do diddly for that. But yeah, it's sucked it up. And if we look into our inventory, we should see, yep, potion of cold resistance. There's nothing left. And if I tried to do it again, right? Potion of cold resistance. Boom. Nope. Sorry, bud. You don't have any. And the reason I don't take them out of this automatically or remove them out of the inventory automatically is because people repopulate them. And it's just easier to see the entry remain there and know that it's not there. At least for me, and that's the way I'm going to do it. Is there really anything else to show? I mean, it applies to all of these that I've put in a requirement for things to be in the inventory. Obviously, not everything does. Protection and evil good does. I mean, it needs holy water or powdered silver and iron, which the spell consumes. Let's see what we got here. Protection of evil and good. Holy water or powdered silver, and this is the one I was looking for, powdered iron. So it's just going to go left or right on these. There's no or sensitivity to it. It's a one-way thing. Live with it. But in this case, it'll accept either one of these, but it'll always want one of these, and it's going to consume them the way it's written. I don't have the tildes in front of anything, but I think that's pretty much it. As you can see here, it says did not have enough holy water or powdered silver in inventory, so it failed. Now, if I put one of those in, it would go to the next thing it required if there was more than one thing required in the list. In this case, there would be. But, you know, I could go into there. What was it? Powdered silver. Go into my item. Powdered silver. Drop it in there. And for my guys, just for sanity cases, I usually put everything in the compounded pouch just so it's handy there, but that's neither here nor there. So we go back and we try and do protection of good. And it says, action protection of good did not have enough powdered iron in inventory because it went to the next one and found that it couldn't do it. And no, I'm not going to make it be super intelligent and figure everything out at once. It's going to do it piecemeal as it hits it. So if I actually threw that out there, what was it, powdered iron? It's also going to consume whatever you tried to do, if it's a consumption thing, because you tried to do the spell, and the spell tried to succeed, and it consumed whatever it could, and that's life. If you didn't want it to consume anything, you'd put a tilde on it. So anyway, if I drop that in, then the spell would work, but it would still be consuming one of, you know, each of the ores and one of the other ones, unless it had a tilde. As confusing as all that was, now that I've set it all up, I have to do nothing, nor do my players. I mean, they'll be just sitting here on the client side doing their stuff. They'll just attack, and either they'll have the ammo or they won't. They don't, so they won't be able to use that. I guess they'll have to try the longbow. And they'll have lost an action. The longbow seems to be firing, and it says consumed one inventory of arrows left, leaving one left. So it's got some arrows there in the singular sense. It's playing that same game. It's got 0 left now, and I believe I had one of each. So now it's gone to the next set that I said was acceptable as ammo. And it's a singular arrow. And if I go down, and this is from the client side, of course. What do we have left now? 0 left. Oh. Let me see here. Yeah, you see how I had to do the unlock and unlock? This doesn't seem to update all the time. Even though I set the max ammo for the set of arrows, like we used the arrow first and then we used up the arrows, or we used the arrows first and then we used up the arrow. And now we're in the process of doing the 20. Now it knew it had one of those left, so it said, well, you've got 20 shots before I consume that. And it actually said it in there. You just couldn't see it. And I don't know the rules for when they update this, but when it doesn't, I just unlock and lock, and it usually does it. Anyway, they've only got one of those 20 packs left, so after I run out here, it'll consume it, right? And once it consumes it, it's going to go ahead and the second time it does an out of ammo, it'll consume it, and then it's going to have the 20 pack that it's just consumed and moved in there. So you have 0 left, and when you run out of this, let's just save some time. When you're out of ammo this time, right, and it tries to clear it and go consume another one, sorry, bud. Now neither of these guys can fire. And the only reason it's stuck on the 20, even though we had 2 zeros in the 20, is because it's the last one in the list that it tried before it could not find anything. Anyway, that's it. That's all I wanted to show.